The street was quiet in the late afternoon, the kind of slow hour when sunlight turns shop windows into soft mirrors and footsteps sound careful on the pavement. The luxury watch boutique sat in the middle of the block like a tiny museum. Its sign, Artemis & Co., was simple and elegant. Inside, the lights were warm and low, the cases spotless, the air carrying a faint mix of leather, coffee, and the clean scent of polished glass. Everything suggested calm, order, and time measured with care. A man in a black jacket pushed the door open and stepped inside. He held a motorcycle helmet by the strap, as if he had just parked and decided to take a look. His hair was a little messy from the wind. His eyes were calm and kind. He did not rush forward or wave for attention. He did what people do when they enjoy quiet places. He looked around slowly, taking in each case, each dial, each little universe behind glass. At the central counter stood Dylan, an employee with a straight posture and a neat tie. He liked things in the right place, cloths folded, watches lined like notes in a song. He knew reference numbers, service histories, and how the light should hit a sapphire crystal to show its depth. He also knew how to read customers, or at least he believed he did. Today had been slow, and he felt the pressure of the hour. He wanted a sale that looked like a sale, the kind that made the daily report shine. He studied the new visitor from the corner of his eye. The jacket was simple. The boots were worn. The helmet sat heavy in the man's hand. Dylan's mind, quick and quiet, made a picture, a curious passerby, not a buyer. He did not decide to be unkind, he simply decided he needed to guide this moment toward the door, gently and fast, so he could be ready for a real buyer if one appeared. He told himself it was professional. The visitor moved to a case of vintage chronographs, those with steady subdials and stories from the past. He leaned closer without touching the glass, reading the tiny lines and the little hands that kept seconds like a soft drum beat. His face brightened in a small, private way people get when something true speaks to them. He was not hunting for a price tag. He was looking for meaning. Dylan approached with his trained smile. "Good afternoon, sir," he said. "May I help you find something within a comfortable range?" The words were polite on the surface. Underneath, they pointed away from the case the visitor admired and toward a corner with simpler models. The visitor lifted his eyes and met Dylan's gaze. "Thank you," he said softly. "I'm interested in the vintage line. They have history." Another salesperson, Lena, glanced over from a polishing tray. She saw the man's gentle focus, the helmet, the jacket, the way he carried himself. She saw something else too, a familiar face she couldn't place at first. The shape of it tugged at a memory. Before the thought could settle, a chime sounded at the door as a woman and her young son entered. The boy's eyes grew wide, as boys' eyes do in rooms full of shining things. Dylan stayed at his post. "The vintage line is sensitive," he said, "not unkind, but firm. We usually show those by appointment." The visitor nodded, unoffended. "I understand," he said. "I'm happy to look from here." He turned slightly, still admiring the old chronographs, their aged loom like tiny moons on a quiet night. His posture was open, not demanding. He looked like a person who enjoyed listening. "Mom," the boy whispered, tugging his mother's sleeve. "Mom, that's..." She pressed a finger to her lips, unsure if she should hush him or let him speak. The visitor, hearing the small voice, gave the boy a gentle smile, the kind that says hello without calling attention. The boy fell quiet, his excitement now a secret he kept between his chest and the glass. Dylan cleared his throat. A guideline in his training echoed in his head: protect the brand image, avoid long interactions with low likelihood of purchase, keep the floor available. He took a breath. "Sir," he said, "we do have other models that are a better entry point. Perhaps you'd like to start there." He angled his body to guide the visitor toward the corner case. It was the kind of gesture you could call helpful if you wanted to see it that way. The visitor did not argue. "I appreciate it," he said. "The stories behind those older pieces speak to me. The way they were made. Who wore them? What they went through." His voice was steady and kind. He was not trying to prove anything. He loved the watches the way some people love old books or old songs, for the life soaked into them. Lena stepped closer to Dylan. She kept her voice low. "I think I recognize him," she whispered. "I'm not sure," but Dylan shook his head a tiny bit, eyes still on the visitor. "Let's keep the focus," he murmured back, more to himself than to her. He was not being rude. He was being efficient, at least in his mind. He believed the scene needed clear lines. He believed he was drawing them. The visitor leaned a little to look at a brushed steel case with a cream dial that had aged like paper. He didn't ask the price. He asked the time period under his breath, as if talking to the watch itself. The boy at the door could not resist. "Mom," he whispered again, "that's Keanu Reeves?" This time his whisper carried. The mother's eyes flicked to the visitor and widened. Her hand squeezed the boy's shoulder, a gentle instruction to stay calm. Dylan heard the name and felt a quick flicker of doubt, the kind that rises fast and tries to fade. He told himself not to get swept up. This happens sometimes. Customers imagined they saw famous faces everywhere. He focused on the job. "Sir," he said, more formal now, "if you're not planning to make a purchase today, we may need to keep the viewing area clear. These are rare pieces. We try to keep them for serious collectors." There was no sharp edge in the visitor's reply. He nodded, the kind of nod that accepts what is said even if it stings. "No problem," he answered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." He stepped back a half pace. The boy looked stricken, as if something bright had been taken out of the room. The mother shifted, torn between speaking and staying silent. The visitor turned slightly toward the door. He paused and looked once more at the old chronographs, the ones that had called to him like quiet bells. He gave a small smile that held no anger, only understanding. He lifted the helmet from his side, the strap curling like a ribbon in his hand. Then he moved toward the exit with the calm of someone who has practiced kindness enough to carry it even when it is not returned. As he reached the door, the boy could not hold back. "I loved your movie," he blurted, his voice bright and soft at the same time. The visitor's smile warmed, and he bowed his head a little toward the boy. "Thank you," he said. His tone made the thank you feel like a gift in both directions. The mother whispered a quick apology for the interruption, but the visitor shook his head gently, as if to say there was nothing to apologize for. The door closed behind him with a soft chime. The sunlight from the street washed across the floor for a second, then settled back into its usual place. Inside, the air felt different, still calm, still scented with leather and glass cleaner, but touched by a quiet question the room could not answer yet. Dylan adjusted his tie. He told himself he had protected the collection. He told himself he had followed the spirit of the rules. He told himself the boy was probably mistaken. Lena set down her polishing cloth. Her eyes rested on the corner case of vintage watches, then on the door, then on Dylan. "He wasn't bothering anyone," she said softly. "He was careful." Dylan did not snap back, that was not his way. He only nodded once, a small movement that could mean many things. He turned to check a display card that did not need checking. He wiped a spot that did not need wiping. The mother approached the counter with the boy at her side. She did not raise her voice or turn the moment into a scene. She spoke with calm, gentle care. "I don't want to tell you how to do your job," she said, "but my son is certain that was Keanu Reeves. He's watched interviews, not just the movies. He knows the way he looks when he smiles. And I saw it too." The boy stood straight and brave, as if protecting not only a memory but the truth of a kind moment. Dylan's mouth went a little dry. The picture in his mind began to crack. He had chosen a path in seconds. He had not paused to test his own belief. He had believed clothing over character, cues over presence. He felt the first pinch of regret, small but sharp, like a tool touching metal where it should not. He glanced toward the street. The black motorcycle outside glowed faintly in the afternoon light. He thought about the watches he loved. He thought about how each one carried a story that asked for patience. He thought about the hands that set them, the lives that wore them, the care they required. He had not offered that care to a person standing in front of him. He had been quick. He had been tidy. He had not been kind. The boutique returned to its steady rhythm, soft footsteps, low voices, the quiet shine of polished dials, but the chapter was not closed. It had only just begun. The boy held his mother's hand and looked once more at the door, as if hoping the kind man might return. Lena gathered a tray and, with a steady breath, made a decision to step outside for a moment, just to look down the block. Dylan stayed where he was, the line of his tie suddenly too straight, the air around him suddenly too still. The seconds on the wall clock continued their patient count, and every one of them carried the simplest truth: there is always time to choose again. The man stepped out into the warm light and set his helmet on the seat of his motorcycle. The street moved in a gentle rhythm, cars rolling past, people strolling with coffee cups, a dog nosing at a planter. He stood there for a moment, breathing in the quiet. He did not look angry or hurt. He looked thoughtful, like a person filing a small memory in the right place. A woman in a denim jacket slowed near him. Her hands trembled a little with nerves. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you?" He gave a simple smile that made it easier for her to speak. "Your movies helped my brother when he was ill," she said. "We watched them together." "Thank you." He listened as if her words were the most important thing he would hear that day. "I'm glad they meant something," he said. "I hope your brother is doing better." They spoke for a few kind minutes. When she left, she carried the same quiet he did: calm, steady, kind. Inside the boutique, Dylan stood very still. The boy's whisper kept circling in his mind. He straightened a stack of story cards that were already straight. He polished a piece of glass that was already clear. His training said one thing, his heart, in this new light, said another. Lena watched him with worried eyes. She had seen the visitor's face in interviews, behind sunglasses, on a red carpet she glimpsed in a magazine at a salon. More than that, she had seen the way he carried himself, open but calm, present but gentle. She stepped closer to Dylan. "We should make this right," she said quietly. "If we can." Dylan wanted to say yes. He also wanted to hide. Regret made both wishes rise at the same time. The door chime sounded again. A woman in a simple black dress stepped in. She had the kind of presence that made a room feel steady. It was Valentina, the owner of Artemis & Co. She had been at a meeting on the next block and decided to stop by because she liked to check the floor when the afternoon sun hit the cases just so. "Good afternoon," she said. "How is everyone?" Before Lena could answer, the mother with the boy spoke, gentle but sure. "I think your staff just turned away someone very special," she said. "My son recognized him." The boy stood straight, a little brave soldier of truth. "He has a motorcycle," he added earnestly, as if that detail would help. Valentina did not rush. She turned to Dylan, and her eyes asked the whole story without a single extra word. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. "I thought," he began, and the rest stayed in his throat. He had no defense that felt honest. "Where did he go?" Valentina asked Lena, voice still calm. Lena pointed toward the street. The boy whispered, "He's right there." Valentina stepped back outside at once. The air smelled like warm pavement and roasted coffee from the cafe 3 doors down. She spotted the man by the motorcycle, helmet in place on the seat, hands loose at his sides. He was listening to the world the way some people listen to music. "Mr. Reeves?" Valentina called, polite but hopeful. He turned and offered the gentle smile the world knew. "Hello," he said. He did not look surprised. He looked ready to meet the moment with grace, whichever way it went. "I'm Valentina," she said. "I own Artemis & Co. If my team made you feel unwelcome, that's my responsibility. I'm truly sorry." She did not hurry her words or load them with excuses. They were simple and true. He gave a small nod that made the apology lighter for her to hold. "Thank you," he said. "It's all right." She hesitated a breath. "Would you let us try again?" she asked. "Even if it's just for a coffee and a look. We have a vintage piece with a real story. I think you might like it." He looked at the shop, then back at her. Something in her tone said this was not about making a sale, it was about setting time right. He nodded. "A piece with a story sounds good," he said. He lifted the helmet, set it gently in the crook of his arm, and walked with Valentina to the door. The mother and boy stepped aside. The boy's eyes shone. The man gave him a little wave that felt like a secret hello between friends. When they entered, the boutique felt different, softer, as if it had taken a breath it didn't know it needed. Valentina guided the visitor to a small table near the window where the light made a quiet square on the wood. She signaled to Lena. "2 coffees," she said, "and the rescue chronograph, please." Lena understood at once. She went to the safe with hands she kept very steady, even when her heart was full. Dylan remained behind the counter for a beat, unsure if he should step forward or step back. He knew the history of their vintage pieces better than anyone on staff. He also knew he had failed at the most basic part of the job: see the person, not the picture in your mind. Valentina glanced at him and gave the smallest nod. It was not a command. It was an invitation to be courageous in a gentle way. Lena returned with a leather tray and set it carefully on the table. On the tray lay a brushed steel chronograph with a cream dial that had aged into something warm and honest. The case had tiny hairline marks, not from clumsy hands, but from years of real use. The watch did not shout. It told the truth in a soft voice. Valentina opened the tray like a book. "This belonged to a medic who worked on rescue teams after earthquakes," she said. "When the power was down, he kept time for shifts with this watch. He wrote names and hours in a notebook so no one worked too long. He timed rest periods. He used the chronograph to mark when it was safe to move to the next site." Her voice stayed steady. There was respect in it. The visitor leaned in, eyes taking in the dial, the subdials, the firm but gentle pushers. He did not ask the price. He asked about the medic. "How is the family?" he said. "What happened to his notebook?" Valentina smiled at the questions. "His daughter brought us the watch," she said. "She kept the notebook. We made a copy for our archive and helped her find a conservator who could protect the paper." He nodded with quiet approval, as if grateful that attention had been paid to the parts of the story that did not glitter in a case. Dylan took a breath and stepped closer, hands folded. "I am sorry," he said. The words were clear and soft, and everyone could hear the steady beat of his regret. "I judged too fast. If you allow it, I would like to tell you what we know about this piece. And if I do not know enough, I will find out." The visitor looked up. Kindness met humility, and both seemed to relax. "Thank you," he said. "Let's look together." Lena set down 2 small cups. The room held a pleasant quiet, the kind that lets words land gently. Dylan began to tell the watch's path, the rescue missions, the basic service it had received without erasing its life, the way the lume on the markers had settled into a soft dusk color that many collectors loved. He talked about how the balance still swung with a steady heart, and how the chronograph sprang to life without stutter. He kept his words simple, as if speaking to a friend who cared about meaning as much as mechanics. The boy and his mother stood a little distance away, not wanting to intrude. The boy tried to memorize everything: the shape of the case, the way the visitor held the watch, like a story he did not want to drop. Valentina noticed the boy's careful focus. She reached into a drawer, took out a small loupe, and knelt to his level. "Would you like to look at the dial from here?" she asked. The boy looked to his mother, who nodded. He peered through the lens, mouth opening the way a door opens into a bright room. "It's like a tiny city," he whispered. "So many lines." Valentina smiled. "Yes," she said. "Every line has a job." Back at the table, the visitor asked simple questions that showed his heart. "If we were to buy watches for people who work very hard behind the scenes," he said, "what would you recommend?" "Not flashy ones. Honest ones. With stories." Valentina nodded slowly, as if a key had turned. "We can do that," she said. "We have pieces that kept trains on schedule in winter fog, a field watch that crossed an ocean in a trunk with letters, and a small timing piece used by a nurse who ran a clinic at night." She looked to Dylan. "You know those stories best." Dylan's voice steadied. "We can select a few that match the spirit you're describing," he said. "We can also write simple cards so the story travels with the watch." The visitor's eyes warmed. "I like that," he said. "Stories should travel." He looked again at the rescue chronograph and fell quiet for a moment. Then he asked a question that showed what mattered to him. "Would the family be comfortable if this piece helped raise support for a hospital? I would not want to move it from one good chapter to another without their blessing." Valentina felt gratitude rising. "They would," she said. "We speak with the daughter often. She wanted her father's watch to keep helping people." The visitor nodded again, pleased by the care. He was not making a grand plan. He was making a small, good one, and checking each step with respect. The door opened, and a courier entered with a slim envelope addressed to the boutique. He had arrived earlier than expected. Valentina signed, opened it, and read quickly. A smile touched her eyes. "This is good news," she said to the table. "The Children's Hospital announced a matching program for this month. Donations will count twice." She did not say it loudly. She just set the paper down where the visitor could see, as if placing a gentle stone in a path so no one would trip. Outside, the light softened by a small degree, as if the day was folding into its later self. Inside, the mood had shifted from careful to kind. Lena brought out another tray with two modest, beautiful watches that told their own quiet truths. Dylan described them with respect, not sales talk. The visitor listened with the same patience he had shown the denim jacket woman earlier. Everything in the room moved at the speed of trust. The mother whispered to her son, "Say thank you for letting us watch," and the boy did, clear and brave. The visitor turned to him and said, "Thank you for recognizing me, friend." The boy's face lit up like morning. It felt as if the room shared a secret that made everyone stand a little taller and breathe a little easier. Dylan felt the shape of his regret changing. When he had first felt it, it was sharp and hot, like a small burn from a careless touch. Now it was cool and clear, like water that shows you what you need to see. He had made a quick judgment. He had hurt someone without meaning to. But now, step by step, he was making space for repair. Valentina wrote a short list on a simple sheet: a few watches for gifts to quiet heroes, the rescue chronograph for an auction, and a plan to print story cards that honored each piece. She slid the paper across the table. The visitor read it, not looking for price first, but for meaning. "This looks right," he said. "One more thought. If it also helps people learn this craft, that would be wonderful." He did not yet say how. He just set the idea gently in the room. They agreed to continue talking through the details. Coffee cups found saucers. The trays closed with soft clicks. The boutique felt less like a store and more like a small library of time and kindness. The boy and his mother waved goodbye. The visitor gave them a nod that promised the day would remain good in their memory. Dylan returned to the counter with a quieter heart. He began to pull paper for the story cards, careful not to smudge a single corner. As the door chimed one last time for the day, the room held a new shape. It was the shape of a mistake being met with grace. It was the shape of people choosing again, this time with more care. Everyone felt it: the owner who led with calm, the employee who learned the courage of apology, the colleague who trusted her sense of kindness, the mother and child who spoke up, and the visitor who accepted the invitation back with steady warmth. In that soft hour, time in the boutique seemed to keep better time than before. You said the table by the window became a small island of calm. Sunlight made a square on the wood, and the watch on the tray shone softly inside that square. The visitor held the loupe to his eye for a second and then set it down, not because he needed a closer look, but because he liked the simple ritual of learning. Dylan stood on the other side of the table with his hands steady and his voice gentle. He explained how the pushers felt firm but not stiff, how the seconds hand returned to zero with a clean snap, how the dial had aged in a way collectors called honest. He spoke in plain words, as if he were telling a friend how a good pen glides on paper. Valentina listened with quiet pride. She knew Dylan's knowledge had always been strong. Today, she saw something new, patience shaped by humility. Lena brought a small folder with notes about other vintage pieces that carried stories. She laid the folder next to the tray. "There are a few more watches like this," she said. "Not famous. Just faithful." The visitor smiled at that word. Faithful. He repeated it once under his breath, as if the sound itself was a good fit. They opened the folder. Inside were simple pages, each with a card clipped to the top. The first card showed a railroad pocket watch from many decades ago. Dylan told the story. A track foreman had used it to keep crews safe in winter fog. He checked times at crossings, made sure signals were clear, and wrote numbers in a small book. He passed it to his granddaughter, Dylan said, who kept it in a drawer for years before she brought it in. She said she wanted it to keep people safe again, even if only by reminding them to be careful with time. The visitor asked, "Does it run?" Dylan nodded. "Yes. It has a strong heartbeat. We serviced it lightly to protect its age. The case has marks from use, but the crystal is clear. It tells time like a steady friend." The next page held a small field watch with a simple dial and thin hands. Valentina told this story. A young woman had worn it when she crossed an ocean with her family. She packed it with letters tied by ribbon and a small photograph. She told us she kept the watch on the long trip because it reminded her that every hour passed, no matter how uncertain the day felt, Valentina said. She said the ticking kept her calm. The visitor listened closely. He did not take notes. He let each detail land and stay. "I would like this one to be a gift for our set medic," he said. "She is always calm when others feel shaken. This watch would speak to her." He chose slowly and kindly, not as a person collecting trophies, but as someone matching tools to people who would honor them. For the sound engineer who often stayed late to finish careful work, he picked a simple, durable watch with a clean minute track. "He loves precise lines," the visitor said. "He likes when small marks add up to something clear." For a stunt coordinator who trained teams with care and never bragged, he chose a sturdy chronograph that could time drills and rests. "He times everything," the visitor said. "But what I admire most is how he respects rest." They kept going. Lena brought a small timer used in a night clinic run by a nurse who lived 2 bus rides from her work. "She used this to space out medicine doses," Lena said. "She told us the sound of it taught her to breathe." The visitor asked if the nurse was doing well now. Lena smiled. She is. We still see her sometimes. She likes to ask if the timer is helping someone, even if it sits on a shelf. Then let it help again, the visitor said. Maybe we can place it with a student who wants to learn careful work. A timer can teach discipline. As they talked, the mother and the boy drifted a little closer, keeping a respectful distance. Valentina noticed and invited them to stand nearby. She handed the boy a blank card and a pen. Would you like to write a few words about what you see? She asked. Sometimes a child's eyes notice something important. The boy's face lit up. He wrote slowly, tongue between his teeth in concentration, "This watch looks calm. It waits." He showed the card. The visitor smiled warmly. That is perfect, he said. Many good things are calm and wait. Dylan pulled a small stack of cream paper from a drawer. We can make story cards for each piece, he said. Not long. Just enough to carry the spirit. He wrote in neat, careful lines, rescue chronograph used by a medic to time shifts after earthquakes when power was down. Helped keep volunteers safe and rested. Serviced lightly to protect its story. Railroad pocket watch kept crews safe in winter fog. Passed from a track foreman to his granddaughter. Takes with a steady heart. Field watch crossed an ocean with letters tied by ribbon. Reminded a family that each hour passes, even when days are uncertain. He left space at the bottom of each card to add a few words from the new owner, so each story could keep growing. The visitor liked that idea. Every tool, he said, should gather new notes. Lena glanced at the rescue chronograph and then at Valentina. Should we ask the medic's daughter before we place it in an auction? She asked. We have her number. Valentina nodded. Yes, she said. Always ask. She stepped into the back room and placed the call. When she returned, her face held a quiet, bright look. She said her father would be proud, Valentina reported. She asked if someone might read his name aloud at the start, just once, so his service could be remembered. We can do that, the visitor said, voice soft. We can keep it simple and full of respect. He looked at the matching letter from the hospital again. If we host the auction this month, the donation will be doubled, he said. Let's choose a date that lets people know, but doesn't make a fuss. They discussed details in clean, small steps, nothing heavy, nothing rushed. Valentina suggested a Saturday afternoon in 2 weeks. We can set out story cards and a tray of tea, she said. No stage. No speeches. Just people who care. The visitor agreed. Quiet can carry far, he said. Dylan found himself breathing easier. Each decision felt like a gear clicking into place. He could see a whole picture forming, gifts that honored quiet workers, an auction that supported care for children, and a set of story cards that treated timepieces like letters between people. The shape of his earlier mistake still lived inside him, but now it pressed him toward better work instead of pressing him down. Regret had become a guide. The boy asked a small question that surprised everyone with its weight. Why do stories matter for watches? He said. The visitor considered. Because stories teach us how to use time, he answered. A watch can tell you it is 3 o'clock. A story can tell you what 3 o'clock is for. The boy nodded as if a new door had opened. He handed back the blank card and kept the idea. Valentina brought out a simple agreement sheet. It had lines for what would be donated, who would receive gifts, and how the boutique would handle the auction. She wrote slowly to keep the words clear. We will prepare 6 gifts, she said, reading as she wrote. We will prepare 3 pieces for the auction, including the rescue chronograph. We will print story cards. We will announce the hospital's matching program on the day, with their permission. She looked up. Anything else? May we add a small line about people who keep things running but rarely stand in the light? The visitor asked. I want the focus there. Valentina added the line. It looked right. Dylan tested the railroad pocket watch with a simple run on the timing machine in the back room. The pattern on the paper strip came out neat and even, like careful stitching. He brought it back, smiling in a way that felt new, open, unguarded, proud in a quiet way. "It runs steady," he said. "I think the sound will make the new owner feel safe." Time moved easily in the boutique. A courier returned with small boxes of fresh cards. Lena organized them into stacks. Valentina checked the safe and signed the log. The visitor stood by the table, not as a guest of honor, but as a kind helper. He asked if he could carry anything. He looked more like a volunteer than a famous name, and that made the room lighter. Before they closed the folder, Dylan found one last page. It showed a simple watch with a white dial and thin numerals. "This belonged to a teacher who used to wind it each morning before class," he said. "She said the ritual helped her start the day with care." The visitor's face deepened with quiet feeling. "I would like this one for our assistant director," he said. "She starts everyone's day with calm plans." They wrote down each pairing, who would receive what, and why. It read like a list of thank yous. At the bottom, in the margin, the visitor wrote a small sentence, "For people who keep time kindly." Valentina gathered the papers. "We'll prepare everything and keep you updated," she said. "Thank you for trusting us to do this with you." The visitor shook his head gently. "Thank you for welcoming me back," he said. He glanced at Dylan. "And thank you for sharing what you know." Dylan met his eyes with gratitude. "Thank you for letting me try again," he replied. "I learned more in the last hour than I have in many weeks." He thought of the first moment at the counter, the quick glance, the fast decision. He would remember that feeling as a warning and a teacher. The mother and the boy said their goodbyes. Valentina slipped the boy's small note, "This watch looks calm. It waits," into the folder, promising to place it near the auction pieces as a quiet sign. The boy smiled so hard his cheeks dimpled. The visitor offered him a gentle fist bump. The boy bumped back, solemn and happy. Cups found the sink. Trays returned to the safe. The square of sunlight by the window moved toward the floor as the day leaned into evening. The boutique settled into the soft sounds of closing, paper sliding into folders, a key turning, a soft brush passing over glass one last time. The visitor looked over the list of gifts and the auction plan. Everything felt right, modest, careful, kind. He paused, as if listening to a thought that had just arrived. Then he looked up at Valentina and Dylan with a calm, bright seriousness that carried no weight of demand. "There is one more thing," he said. "It is not about price or special treatment. It is about giving the next person a path. If we are going to do this together, I would like to add one condition." The room grew very quiet when he said he had one condition. His voice stayed calm, but there was a bright steadiness in it, like a clock hand pointing to the next minute with purpose. He did not ask for a discount or a special favor. He asked for a path. "If we are going to do this," he said, looking at Valentina and then at Dylan, "I would like part of your margin from these sales and from the auction to support a watchmaking apprenticeship. Not a one-day class. A real program. Paid, so students do not have to choose between learning and eating. And I would like Dylan to help build it." He let the words settle. They felt simple and brave at the same time. Valentina did not hesitate. She had built her boutique with care and believed luxury should carry responsibility, not just shine. "Yes," she said, and her yes was clear. "We will do that. We will write it now." She pulled a clean sheet from the folder and began to outline the promise in plain lines: a seasonal apprenticeship, a living stipend, a tool kit for each student to keep, and mentoring hours tracked like careful service notes. She added one more line, because it felt right: each student would prepare one story card about a watch from their own family or community, to learn how to honor people while they learn to honor parts. Dylan stood very still. He felt his heart climb to his throat and then settle again. He had expected a polite handshake and a quiet goodbye. He had not expected trust. "I will do my best," he said, voice low. "I will give the students everything I can give." He already saw the first lesson in his mind: breathing before lifting a hairspring, the way patience travels from lungs to fingertips so a tiny coil does not bend. The visitor smiled in that gentle way that made space for everyone else. "Thank you," he said. "I know you will." He took a pen and signed under Valentina's lines, not as a celebrity signing an autograph, but as a partner making a clean promise. Valentina signed too. She dated it and wrote the time in the corner out of habit, as if to say, "This is when the good work began." Lena, who had been quiet because she did not want to break the shape of the moment, found her voice. "I know someone at the community college," she said. "They have a small bench room and a teacher who loves careful work. He says there are always a few students who have the hands and the heart, but not the funds." Valentina nodded. "Please call him," she said. Lena stepped to the back with her phone and returned a few minutes later with bright eyes. "He says yes," she reported. "He will send names of 3 students who are ready to start as soon as we are ready to teach." The visitor looked pleased. "Let us prepare well for them," he said. He reached into his jacket and unfolded a small list he had written earlier in the day, the way some people carry a poem. "Here is a simple kit I would like each apprentice to receive," he said. "Case knife, spring bar tool, tweezer set, screwdrivers, loop, soft cloths, pegwood, and a small timing app guide. Nothing fancy. Tools that teach respect." He placed the list on the table. "I will fund the first round of kits," he added, as if he were offering someone a cup of tea. Dylan touched the paper with care. He loved that the list started simple. He loved that it would be theirs to keep. He thought of himself as a new hire years ago, borrowing tools and dreaming of a bench of his own. He could picture the faces of students opening a box and finding more than metal and glass inside. They would find a future that looked like steady work and good stories. Valentina added a practical note to the agreement: "Artemis & Co. will dedicate 2 hours every Saturday morning to apprentice training, with Dylan as lead mentor and Lena as coordinator. Apprentices will receive a modest stipend each week. They will service donated pieces that can be placed in low-cost community sales, with all proceeds going to the hospital fund until the auction is complete, and to the apprenticeship fund after that." She looked up to check the room. The visitor nodded. "That is a strong plan," he said. "Clear, honest, useful." The mother and the boy listened, standing a little to the side as if at the edge of a friendly stage. The boy whispered to his mother, "Can I be an apprentice when I am older?" The mother smiled and squeezed his hand. Valentina heard and smiled too.